path on the northern limit, southern limit, so they could be close to each other rather than 34 states apart. Just depends. Okay, next thing. What I'd like to do is try the same thing we did in 2012, and that's it's a continuation of Iota's long-term solar radius measurement research, which originated by David and Joan Dunham, I believe, 41 years ago. I read that paper. And yeah. Again, we want to standardize all the video equipment, standardize the solar filters, which Iota's been criticized for in the past. This will be our second piece, second attempt at narrowband filters. In with the narrowband filters, the proper wavelengths, we can calibrate it with the Picard satellite data. Next slide.
We're getting some garbled audio here being broadcast. Why that would be the case.
The Picard satellite was launched about 3 years ago, and they estimated it would last for 3 years, but it's still going. So we do have some data from the Picard satellite. Yeah. While we're waiting for the next slide, does anyone in this room want to attempt this Eclipse?
Oh, yeah.
We got some more people. Okay. Yeah, great. Okay. Maybe we should meet at Tony's house in Oregon.
Any amateur astronomers in the U.S. anywhere who won't be in the
Yeah. Should we have a Bailey Speed Award? Okay, this is a diagram showing Iota's method for determining the solar radius calculation. Is basically a skinny triangle. That's what I explained to middle school students, but it's actually a little more complicated than that. We have a known distance to the moon, known distance to the sun. We have a known size of the moon, and known position on the ground on Earth. The only unknown is the diameter of the sun. Okay, next slide. Okay, this is hard to see here, but this is the sunlight shining behind the mountains of the moon. This is what the Bailey's beads effect look like, but it's showing more than like 100 degrees of sun. The sun. If you go quickly to the next slide. Now, before you go to the next slide, the idea here is to determine if the radius of the sun has changed from one time period to another. If the sun was at a certain diameter here, and if it got larger, go to the next slide. Then the length of the Bailey's beads would increase. Remember, the moon is moving east to west, or left to right in this diagram. So, if the sun is larger, we see more beads. That's the basic concept here of determining the radius. Okay, next slide. We'd like to try to maintain the same equipment specifications as we did 2 years ago, and that's a telescope aperture between 75 and 100 millimeters, 3 to 4 inches aperture. The field of view is typically going to be 15 to 20 arc minutes, which is plenty for doing the Bailey's beads. We're going to stick with the beta solar filters, which many of us already have, and we can order some more. And we're going to use the RATN 23 and number 56 these are flexible filters that you can put in front of your video camera, narrowband filters. And the video cameras, the PC164 and the Wattex. And go to the next slide. Those two video cameras have very similar spectral response curves. They're not identical, but they're very close. This is why we chose the beta filter. As you can see, the other filters have really wild and crazy spectral response near the area of interest. So we went with the beta solar filter. Next slide. These are the filters that Walt Morgan ordered. They came in 5-inch sheets, and we just passed them around. They're pretty cheap, about $10 a piece. And next slide. You could make your own filter cell, or if you have a dew shield like I do on the Questar, what I did was just lay it on top of the Questar and shove the dew shield on top of it. If you get to the next slide.
That says there's 9 of 9, that's the last slide.
Oh, really?
Oh, good call.
I got 4 more slides. Could we upload the other one? Yeah, part 2.
I've got a pot of social red. You don't want that.
No. Yeah. We have to be, I'm speaking at the solar conference in October, and we have to be consistent because Jay Pascal is going to be watching. Yeah, I know. I'm right before him on his talk, so he'll be working. No, I'm not worried about him. Not worried about him. He doesn't scare me. Yeah, I'm on the agenda. No,
We're trying to go to it.
okay.
Where is this going to be?
5 o'clock on the next day. It's October. It's 2 days after this partial solar eclipse. It's on Thursday. Oh, okay.
Ready to go. One more second, you'll see the first slide of part 2.
Okay, so for this particular filter, the picture on the left, I just lay the filter on top of the telescope and just cram the dew shield on top, and it spreads it out clean with no wrinkles. Kind of very lucky. Okay, next slide.
Is this the same? Never mind.
This is the wavelength of the narrowband filters we're going to be using. The number 56 peaks out around 535 nanometers, and the number 23A filter peaks out around 607 nanometers, and these are identical wavelengths to the Picard satellite. From the Solar Diameter Imager and Surface Mapper, abbreviated SODISM. Okay, next slide. Yeah, from this paper that came out earlier this year, these guys used the SODISM instrument to measure the diameter radius of the sun at the 607 nanometer wavelength. And what they came up with, they used the transit of Venus to make this observation. This was 2 years ago. And what they did, they came up with a value of 959.86 arc seconds. And this is the all solar radius calculations are based on the 1 astronomical unit distance. The Earth's orbit is elliptical slightly, so we pick 1 AU. And actually, the definition of 1 AU is slightly larger than an AU. When we get to it. And the previous best estimate for the radius of the sun, now there really is no such thing as a best estimate, but I just pulled this out of the literature, 959.63 arc seconds, a difference of 0.23 arc seconds, which is theoretically measurable by our technique. I believe we can get it to 0.05, plus or minus 0.05. No, actually larger, plus or minus 0.2 maybe. Yeah, arc seconds. Next slide. By the way, this paper shows the plate scale is a little over 1 arc second per pixel on the Picard satellite. These are the narrowband filters. I got them off of eBay. I bought a bunch of them, passed them around. They're flexible. You can use a pair of scissors and cut it to basically just lay it on top of the video chip. Is the best way to do it. Or make a filter that screws in. Okay, next slide. So this Eclipse is 3 years away. We have plenty of time to work on it. And here's the special response for the two cameras, the Watech and the PC-164. Very similar, not identical, but I believe it'll work. I believe it'll work. Okay, next slide. I will talk about several of the methods we can use to determine the radius. There are several methods we're investigating. Constantino Segmonti and his student Andrea Raponi published a paper on the inflection point method. That seems to be the new hot method, although some people disagree with it. And we can talk about that next year or the year after. We have time to go over that. This is the I was a co-author on the paper, so I'm going to stick with the inflection point theory. The idea for placing filters at the southern limit and northern limit is to have a narrowband filter of each style at two different stations at both limits. This way we can cover nearly all combinations. And this is where we plan on setting up, about half a kilometer apart on each limit. Okay, next slide. This is Ted Swift's video frames from Eclipse from 2 years ago. As you can see, we got some decent Bailey beads over several frames. And the total time interval from the top upper left to the bottom lower left is 15 seconds. So the beads change rapidly. Okay, next slide. I see a question here. Do these filters leak IR, so we need an IR blocking filter? I don't think so. I don't think we need an IR blocking filter.
You have a beta plus the color filter, correct?
Yes, yes.
Beta on top, filter down.
Exactly. Yeah, the beta would be on the end of the tube, and the filter would be right. I put my filter right on top of the video chip. I cut it in such a way to make it so it wouldn't move around. Okay, this is globe diagrams of the next 4 eclipses. We can try this beforehand if we get people to go to these eclipses. But the August 2017 eclipse appears to be the best opportunity for U.S. observers because we have a lot of people here. Weather prospects are reasonably good, or whatever that means. We've heard that before. And we'll keep more on this. We have 3 years. I'd really like to try and have everyone use the identical camera and identical aperture telescope if possible. But people show up with 8-inch telescopes and 12-inch telescopes, and that's fine. But we at least want to have piggyback on your other big telescope, a 3 or 4-inch telescope.
Like the 2 days, the middies.
Well, I mean, not that everyone should go out and buy a Questar, but if we can keep the same aperture, then we can keep it. And then again, sky transparency is going to make a difference, depending on where you are.
Do we need to talk about where I think maybe eastern Colorado would be a cool place to do?
Well, with the weather, say, the weather may be 2 days out, so we might have a chance to drive. Yeah.
I know you're talking about the rack 56, but I've got a water continuum filter, which is a green filter, which is a very narrow band green filter. It's got a very short pathway. So that I think would be a very good filter.
Well, we want to match the Picard satellite wavelengths. That's what we want to do. So that's why I chose these two. That's why I chose these two. I think we should stick with them. Joan.
What are the chances that you're going to be able to get a CC-164 ES2 2017? Considering how fast it changed the model from the
Buy it now. And the question is how. What are the question is, what are the chances that we can get a PC-164EX2 3 years from now? Unknown. I don't know, I guess, you know.
Yes, I was just put it not yet.
I stand behind my Chinese digital recorders because they work. They work. And this is the last slide, so if we have any other questions or comments? David.
Okay, there's another thing. There are people from Iota ES who are planning to come here too. And they have different filters. I think they've been trying to baseline, and so that's why they have some argument with you over what filters to use. As long as they're bringing their own, then we can cross-correlate each other's anyway. So that's, I mean, they recognize that this is going to be, you know, a good eclipse. I mean, they're sort of concerned that, you know, with our techniques, we really can't get that good of accuracy that the solar physicists were hoping we could get, because, you know, each system is slightly different and the transparency is different and everything. And when we actually correlate, well, we've had enough data where we've had video observations from 2 or 3 stations at each limit, so we can make comparisons. We found the inner comparisons, the accuracy, the differences between the accuracies using different sets of observers' equipment was about 0.2 of a second of arc instead of the formal uncertainties that we were getting when we threw everything in the pot and then we get something of the order of 400ths or something. So they're to actually define when the inflection point precisely is the main problem. And it's you know, a very difficult nut to crack. And the professionals have the same problem with the satellite data. You know, and they have thermal effects on those satellites, which cause problems, and it's pretty serious. There is some idea, but also we've been observing people who've observed. We have data from eclipses in the 19th century that were, of course, just observed visually, and now people relatively untrained and so forth. And then we have, in the early days, before we had video cameras, we just went out and projected the sun's image, and then timed with WWV on a tape recorder, called out events, you know, and of course sometimes at the end they would get too complicated, you couldn't keep up with them, but we have a lot of, you know, hundreds of Bailey Beads timings that were done visually up into the 80s, early 80s, before we, and then everyone switched to video, you know, because it was so much easier. So we have this mixture. We have, you know, direct naked eye. We have, you know, projection images and visually and so forth. And it would be good to also correlate those with these modern methods then, and to see how that works. So we do want a lot of people to try these different techniques, and we figured this eclipse, there would finally be enough people to do that. We've never, at the eclipses we went to in India and different places, we never had enough people. You know, we had enough trouble just getting our equipment to work ourselves. You know, so this is one time in the Europeans were under the impression, well, you know, since you really can't get the accuracy that the physicists want, why do it? You know, and so eclipses are nice to travel to, but you know, we're not really getting science that's that useful, because the solar variations are probably smaller than the 2/10 that we think we can get. And so that if we really standardize things, maybe we can do better. So they figured, well, let's go all out for 2017 and do the best we can with all different techniques, and so we can correlate things with the past and whatever. And then we can do an analysis of all the data we hopefully get, and then make a decision what to do in the future, whether to try to go to all these weird places that are fun to go to, but you know, how useful is it? You know, can we actually get NSF money or something? But then another big problem is, in my view, it's a problem, has come up because the solar physicists have a specific project that they want Iota to work on. If they see Iota getting all these results, and they know about some of these asteroid occultations, they think that's great. You can get observers that spread across the country. You can do all these wonderful things and get these asteroid shapes and amazing occultations. You can employ people to unusual places and get good results. So please, could you use your people to help us get measurements of the corona? We will buy you cameras to put on your telescopes to record the corona. And they want to get a movie of the corona continuously across the U.S. In the shadow. So they want people at 50-mile intervals along the whole path near the center line. We want to be near the edges, but they want us to be near the center line. And right. So anyway, I mean, I told them, I told them that Iota really doesn't have the resources that you think we have, to do that sort of thing. But there are a lot of other amateur astronomers. You ought to talk to the people on the solar eclipse mailing list. It's a bigger group than ours. There are a lot of, and they have reached. Actually, I'm not sure of that. But the Astronomical League has gotten involved now, and I said that's the group to go to, because they can get the local clubs out and work with them. And we'll try to give you some ideas of logistical or how to arrange things or whatever. But anyway, they're having a conference to try to set this up in Columbia on the end of August 20th and 21st. So I'm planning to go there only because my brother-in-law lives there, and we've never visited him there. So that's I sort of have to be a spokesman for Iota, and I think I'll take your presentation and say this is what we want to do. But
Fast enough to keep up with the moon's shadow?
you could. You can't, you can't get the resolution. And they want to. They were talking about using C8s to image the corona, and I said, well, they're too narrow field of view. And people who've actually done, they look at the beautiful results that the people in the Czech Republic, I think, have gotten at some of the recent eclipses, and looked at their stuff. They observed it 2008 and 2006 and 2010. They've got some really nice corona shots. Gradient filters and different things with modern techniques where they really see a lot of detail that people are really interested in, because the satellites can't get as close as they can during eclipses. And so they say there's good value in this, and they are planning to get support to outfit a bunch of these systems and things. So they were talking about the hardware, and that's going to be a subject there too. I said, well, you want to go with some smaller scopes that get a wider field of view, and the people in the solar eclipse mailing list said, yeah, that's what you need to do. And so we will see. It's sort of an interesting problem, but how much Iota will be dragged into it is TBD. And what we can really do. Yes, you're right.
Another point to think about is that you're doing scientific work. You're doing it for a tax-exempt organization.
Yeah.
The expenses are tax-exempt.
Looks like you are ready to go. The first one is black. The second one is blind. The third one is blind. The fourth one is that.
I'll just read it off. Okay, the Iota VTI video time inserted status report, but we're missing the first three slides. I'm going to read off the sheet. The Iota VTI was developed by Gabe Galt and Tony Berry in Australia. They assigned the rights under Iota under conditions intended to assure continued availability to Iota members. Iota has issued an exclusive license to Video Timers to manufacture and sell the device. Video Timers is Walter Morgan and Sandy Baumgartner. Walt is the proprietor and Sandy is the engineer. I'm going to skip the circuit board evolution. We don't need to talk about that. Only two major goals. Sales have been made to 20 countries, most recently to Spain and Norway.
Steve's going to bring it up off of his and you still have the first two slides. Okay.
While we're waiting for the slides, the Iota VTI has both an internal and an external GPS option. The cable for the external GPS is 12 feet long, which means if you're operating inside an observatory, you can have it sit outside the observatory. If you're mobile, like on top of a car hood or on the ground, you don't really need that. Okay. If you can skip to the third slide, Steve.
Oh, that's great. This is
It's going through the pipeline.
Okay. The prices of the Iota VTI have not changed. The basic version started in July 2011, and the external dual versions were first sold in March of 2012. And you can skip that slide. I don't have the prices on the sheet, but they're on the view graph. Yeah.
they're on slide 5.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay. If you buy the Iota VTI in the United States, the shipping charge averages around $12. If you buy it overseas, the shipping charge averages about $48. Hart, do you have one of these? You have an Iota VTI? Okay. How do you like it? It's great. Okay, here's the prices. The basic unit, $249, which is the internal GPS unit. The external GPS unit is $300, and if you want both the internal and external GPS unit, $350. Details on the Video Timers website, videotimers.com. Next slide. The next slide is really just about the circuit board stuff. The sales history of the Iota VTI, it's been out for 3 years, July of 2011, it was first introduced.
Yeah, on my system, we're waiting for it on the second system.
Okay, you see like a graphic, the histogram, okay. You look at the histogram, each one of those vertical bars is represent a 3-month time period. They're quarters, not months, so gotta be careful when you look at that. But the sales have been pretty good. Initially, they were very good. Over 50, nearly 60 units sold the first 3 months. Then they went kind of down, and they kind of fluctuated. We go to the next slide. And the next 2 slides, they show the calendar year 2012 and then 2013. The royalties paid to Iota averages around $10 per unit, something like that. Is that right, Chad? $8 to $10 a unit? Okay.
I've got a check sitting at home that I can deposit.
Anyway, thus far, to date, since the introduction of the unit, approximately $1,800 in royalties has been paid to Iota. Okay. And a total of 266 units have been sold. And if you work out the numbers, that's 7.38 units per month, last 3 years. So it's been pretty good. It's been pretty successful. And that's it. Are there any questions? Okay, that's it for the video timers.
Yeah, Walt sends the check 4 times a year. All the officers get a regular report every time before we send out check. Kind of what happened, what boards we might have gotten fried, or what the serial numbers were, the ones that were ordered, and how many were ordered, how many were shipped, and it's always by the book. Everything's been working for the book. You know where they're gonna.